If you ask me, Sonic's universe, as in the world where the stories take place, has been in limbo for about a decade now, and that is due to the meta era's equivalent of '06, Sonic Forces! Allow me to explain. Forces was meant to be a bit of a return to the more serious and layered storytelling of the 2000s. We haven't seen the prior since Unleashed and the latter since '06 in terms of big mainline Sonic games anyway. However, Forces doesn't have what all prior games did, a clean happy ending, and a runtime of over 2 hours. Now, of course, Sonic and crew beat Eggman and saved the day, but a lot was left open. The Empire was crushed, but the world still needed to be rebuilt from 6 months of tyranny. Everyone is alive, but it's clear that what happened still weighs on them, even if it's kept simplistic to stay PG. We still haven't gotten a game that shows us how most of the cast or the world is doing after it all. And I will focus on the games here. I get that there's been canon media since, be it video games and audio podcasts, the IDW comics, miscellaneous animations, Tales Tube, Sonic Prime, although that one is severely incompatible with the universe and especially the characters. Wait, where was I? Right, yes. There has been a push to make Sonic not have way too many alternate continuities in which the expanded media takes place, which I can understand, but let's not lose track here. The point is that, while the other media definitely matters, in terms of games, all we've had since Forces were 2 racing games, a 2-hour-long visual novel, and Sonic Frontiers. And Frontiers is a lore-heavy game that also lets us catch up with Team Sonic a good bit, but we're confined to a small cast on the Starfall Islands, far from the world we saw destroyed in Forces. So, before Sega announces a new game and shows us what this world and expanded cast will look like after Frontiers, I want to throw my hat into the ring and see what I can come up with. Team Sonic needs to split up. This has been directly built up in Frontiers, so I don't think I need to explain why it must happen in-universe, but in the real world, things have revolved around Sonic and only Sonic for a while now. The last time Tails and Knuckles weren't just as sidekicks but as equals gameplay-wise was in Sonic Adventure 1, which released in 1998. And even if you count the Advance games, 2004 with Advance Free is not a good look. And truthfully, I don't know if Amy being Silver's sidekick instead in '06 is anything to be proud of. So, they need to split up. What can we do with that without using a time skip and having it all be off screen? Obviously, they can't share one campaign like they did in Final Horizon. Well, I think giving them all their own games would be stupid and insane when there's an old, reliable game structure. Multiple campaigns like the Adventure quadrilogy. And no, this isn't me being one of those bozos asking for Adventure Free. With the members of Team Sonic split up, each of them can have their own campaign in the same game akin to SA1, except that they never properly cross paths and get to compare notes. Due to their respective personal journeys, they all get involved into the same scheme by the game's overarching villain, and finally unite again for the final act. Amy could focus on the civilian side of things, making sure to keep morale up during tragedy as a way to spread love to the world. Knuckles, who would have a shrunken down Master Emerald with him at all times, would probably be dealing more with the in-depth lore. I'm not sure if he should still be a treasure hunter, but I can see him attracting whatever ancient monsters get released this time either way as he explores the world outside Angel Island or something like that. Tails shouldn't go through his SA1 arc again if you ask me. Should they do a minor time skip, it'd allow him to start with a community that he's already gotten to be a hero for. It could be under attack due to the villain's plan, making him build up defensive systems and then get involved himself as he deals with the villain directly. That leaves It's been ages since Sonic has felt truly alone in a mainline game. The latest entry you could argue to count would be Sonic for Episode 1, but let's be honest, the last solo Sonic mainline game was CD in 1993. I would like to see a different side of Sonic. The one we sometimes hear of, where he's more quiet and introspective, that he can now show that he doesn't have anyone else who needs their spirits kept up. He'd obviously still be the same dickhead, but it'd be interesting to see him without anyone to bounce off of in interactions for once. Finally, I think we could delve a bit into his origins. Some of you might recall how Sonic Boom was originally supposed to be about his origin story, but Sega or Sonic Team denied the idea so that they could tell it one day. So do it! I don't want a story about what got him to South Island in Sonic 1, but bringing him into a similar situation could at least let us delve into what motivates him to be the hero he is now by thinking about his first ever adventure. Now, I doubt we'll ever get a family reveal or an explanation of his speed, neither of which really feel necessary anyway, but it can't hurt to see him reevaluate his philosophy a little with all the things that have happened to him since the first Sonic game. but there's more characters than just these four, aren't there? The theoretical game I just described is Team Sonic heavy, and while others can obviously pop up, I think they'd need their own media to get the attention they deserve. Luckily, Chaotix's case files shows that Sonic can not just handle stories across different mediums just fine, but also that these stories don't need to focus on the blue blur. And Case Files was good. It let the Chaotix be proper detectives, it finally gave us voices for unvoiced characters, it actually gave the canonicity of the IDW comics a purpose by incorporating its characters and plot, and it gave us interesting developments for not just the Chaotix, but also Infinite, when he returns as the final antagonist. The IDW comics have mild issues with that, the biggest one being the lack of easy jumping on points to get character-specific focus, but other podcasts, small games like Shadowgens, or animated miniseries could function really well here. Team Dark most definitely could get some focus soon, now that Shadowgens brought Shadow's character somewhat back on track. A spin-off game or a show where they go on gun missions could be interesting. Also, obviously, I hope future racing games post Crossworlds get stories about the Babylonians again, maybe delving into how they tie into other civilizations. I'm open to anything. The final characters I want to focus on, however, are Silver, Blaze, and Eggman Nega. I'm not sure anymore if future movies will actually feature Silver due to the confirmations that Amy will take some of his backstory, but I sincerely hope they don't let Paramount with their horrifically bad adaptations have complete power over the way the main universe's story progresses, because the movie series is most likely going to end one day while the games will outlive it. So, basically, a small-scale cyberpunk Silver game. If you're into Yakuza / Like a Dragon, first off, I'm sorry for what you're going through, I feel your pain, and also think of the Gaiden games. Definitely bigger than Shadowgens since it's not in a package of a remaster, but nowhere near as massive as Frontiers. Speaking of that kind of package, Sonic X Blaze Unleashed. Unleashed actually needs a re-release, and they could use it as an excuse to get a version of Endless Possibilities that isn't a copyright nightmare. Also, Blaze is connected to the sun, while Sonic is connected to the moon in Unleashed, plus this would basically be a first time to shine since Rush Adventure, which takes place not too long before Unleashed. It just makes sense. But if these two heroes get to resurface, so should the villain connected to them, Eggman Nega. Hear me out on this. I think he shouldn't just be their specific villain. I think he should take over Eggman's position as the main evil scientist of the franchise. But for that, I should probably talk about Eggman himself first. Sonic 1 was a story about technology, represented by Eggman, trying to repress nature, but nature, represented by Sonic, fighting back. Both characters had an almost exclusively symbolic role, but they've gotten deeper since then. With Sonic getting humanized, it makes sense to do the same with Eggman, which is presumably what Ian Flynn's intention was with the Eggman memos in Frontiers. And that game is pivotal for my argument here. In Sonic 1, all Eggman did was pervert life in his image, something he continues to do up until he fails to do it in Frontiers as the Starfall Islands assimilated him and his tech. However, Eggman clearly was also interested in creating life himself, as we see with the mechanical Sonic copies in the classic era, kind of the E100 series in general, Orbot and Cubot, and his most successful attempt, Sage. Bit by bit, his conscious robots went from silent enforcers to actual living beings that act like people. Sage is in this interesting sweet spot where she's loyal, competent, and still willing to set him straight when he's on the wrong path, something he's never achieved before. This can change him. Eggman doesn't just work as a symbol for technology, he's also the one main character that's a human. And unless you are a very sad person that requires therapy, chances are you don't believe humanity is pure evil. What I'm getting at is that Eggman finally having someone whose well-being he genuinely cares about might make him less willing to unleash the likes of Dark Gaia. I think he'd still work as the occasional minor or even major antagonist, but he'd probably be less willing to risk losing everything when fighting Sonic again. Also, this would allow for another plot that looks into Eggman's creations, with Sage adoring Eggman, Omega hating Eggman, Metal Sonic being somewhere in between, Orbot and Cubot mocking Eggman, and General having abandoned Eggman's director for him. There's definitely potential for a clash here, especially if we bring attention to Eggman's first big failure, Gamma! Obviously, Gamma was destroyed and the flaky inside has returned to his family, but Chaos Gamma, the new robot built out of his scraps, was just kind of forgotten about towards the end of Sonic Battle. I won't write a whole fanfic, but I think we all agree here that there is some potential in continuing Gamma's arc with a new robot trying to be him, or at least like him, in this new era of Eggman robots. But to get back to Eggman's antagonist role, this is why I think Nega could take over. Nega has been characterized to be more destructive and monstrous than good old Ivo, so he'd be an interesting new take on the mad scientist that we've gotten to know very well by now. And just to be clear, no, I'm not advocating Eggman basically just turns into the Sonic Boom version of himself. I also don't want Eggman Nega to be the new main villain. Just doing what is essentially a palette swap would be an insult to the fans. I think Frontiers has given us a perfect recurring antagonist as is. There hasn't really been a multi-game saga since the 2000s, huh? Most I can think of is Generations acknowledging Eggman being lost in space at the end of Colors. Mania and Forces were, in my opinion, way too disconnected to consider a saga, honestly. Well, I'll just state directly that I want Frontiers to start the next saga, where the characters have to handle the End. It was technically defeated in Frontiers, but all we really did was destroy its shell. Explaining the return of the End is even easier than what Case Files did with Infinite. What I want out of the End is an inversion of Sonic's thematic battle with Eggman. If Eggman starts to represent a part of humanity that can occasionally harmonize with nature, it'd be interesting for the games to explore natural entropy as an antagonistic force. Eggman's team-ups with Sonic are especially thematically resonant like this, by the way. When it comes to the thematic clashes between nature and technology in Sonic games, there are three types: nature versus technological corruption, nature versus technology and corrupted nature, and nature and technology versus nature corrupted by technology. Do note that I'll count other Eggman fuck-ups like Metal Overlord for the latter, they're just more tech than nature. The only real difference is whether Eggman tries to use some natural force to do his bidding, and if he and Sonic join forces in the story. Frontiers finally lets tech be on your side while a natural force is the enemy, and I think we can keep this thematic train going. I'll save myself the fanfic writing once again, but I'm sure you can think of something that works. Plus, if Sonic Team wants to keep the slightly somber tone from Frontiers in the future, I think the End could be a really good overarching antagonist for it. Although I do hope we'll get something truly epic like 06 tried to be, which I believe is possible thanks to Shadowgens bringing us closer to that again with a cutscene quality that can actually support it. But that's just what I think. Sonic is finally properly taking its story seriously again, partially because Sega realized that that'll get people to buy the games, and it couldn't hurt to see where that'll bring us. If Kirby could suddenly switch from his storyline format to whatever the fuck is happening right now, then maybe the franchise that fucking nailed its overarching story for 10 years and then did its best to keep things up for another 5 can get back into the swing of things itself. I'm not really dead set on any of these ideas. I think anything could work if done well, but I guess this video kinda was about what I'm hoping for. I definitely think it's a good time to expand the universe and give smaller characters their time to shine. But hey, how do you think things should go from here? If you have any interesting ideas for the future of Sonic, be sure to let me know down below. But that's enough from me. It's been real, I've been real, and good night.